Amy Slaton's relationship with Brian Scott Lavin became more public during the seventh season of 1,000-Pound Sisters, but the developments surrounding their family over the past year have raised new questions and speculation among fans. What initially appeared to be just another chapter in Amy's personal life quickly shifted into a more serious situation, especially when her newborn child faced an unexpected medical emergency that resulted in hospitalization. During this period, Amy's public presence changed noticeably. Her tone on social media, her availability, and even her usual joking personality appeared quieter, more controlled, and reflective. Those shifts aligned with what later became known. Her baby required urgent medical care and ongoing monitoring. Amy's history with motherhood has always been deeply connected to her weight loss journey and health improvements. Before receiving bariatric surgery, Amy feared that pregnancy might never be physically possible for her. The risks associated with obesity, including high blood pressure, diabetes, and breathing complications, significantly limited her chances. After undergoing surgery and losing over 120 pounds, Amy was finally cleared to become pregnant, a moment she described as life-changing. She eventually welcomed her first son, Gage, followed by Glenn, during her marriage to Michael Halterman. The children became the central focus of her life, especially as her marriage faced growing strain. The separation from Michael in 2023 was heavily discussed online and partly shown on television, which intensified the pressure Amy felt as both a public figure and a newly single mother. Raising young children, filming a reality show, and navigating emotional and logistical challenges placed her in a vulnerable position. Her relationship with Brian began during this transitional period and was first introduced casually, but it developed quickly. While some viewers considered the pace concerning, others saw the relationship as a needed source of emotional stability for Amy. As Amy and Brian continued dating, things progressed faster than what many expected. Their interactions online and small details from filming revealed that Brian had integrated himself into Amy's family life early, supporting her role as a mother and becoming involved in routine responsibilities. This included attending outings with the children, helping with errands, and participating in family events. For a period, the relationship appeared positive and supportive, especially considering the challenges Amy faced following her separation. The dynamic between Brian and Amy became even more significant when the medical situation with the baby occurred. The details of the emergency were not immediately clear to the public, but what became known was that the child required hospital treatment and observation. This event brought Amy into a difficult emotional state. People who followed her online noticed fewer updates, shorter captions, and less engagement. Posts that previously included humor, selfies, crafts, and typical daily content became rare. When Amy did post, her messages appeared brief and reserved, indicating a shift in her emotional environment. While the hospitalization was occurring, Brian reportedly remained deeply involved. He assisted Amy with transportation, communication with family members, and managing schedules related to the older children. His presence during this time appeared to solidify his role not just as a boyfriend, but as a long-term partner. This support became one of the main reasons fans later speculated that Amy and Brian's relationship accelerated into engagement and possibly marriage, even before any official announcement. Amy later acknowledged that she struggled to sleep during the nights at the hospital. She remained close to her child's bedside, waiting for updates from doctors and observing vital signs, monitors, and medical staff movements. From the outside, it was clear the situation was emotionally demanding. Parents who have experienced hospital stays with infants often describe the emotional toll as overwhelming, especially when medical teams cannot immediately provide long-term clarity or prognosis. During this period, Amy's family dynamics resurfaced as a point of public interest. While the Slaton sisters have often been portrayed with humor and chaos on camera, moments of crisis tend to highlight how differently each member responds. Some relatives expressed support online, while others refrained from commenting publicly. The circumstances surrounding the hospitalization also overlapped with major personal developments, including the early stages of Amy's engagement to Brian. The proposal itself occurred during an outing that matched the couple's shared interests. The location, a haunted house attraction in Henderson, Kentucky, eventually became a widely discussed detail because of Amy's ongoing enthusiasm for Halloween-themed aesthetics. The ring also reflected that style, featuring skeleton hands forming a heart. For outsiders, the proposal may have appeared unconventional, but for Amy and Brian, it aligned with a theme they had embraced since early in their relationship. Shortly after the engagement, the couple moved forward with wedding planning. Originally, the intended venue was a haunted asylum, an idea that generated mixed reactions among family members. Tammy, in particular, opposed the location due to concerns over negative energy and symbolism. She refused to attend if the wedding was held there, expressing strong feelings about the emotional and spiritual associations of the venue. This disagreement led to tensions that continued throughout the planning phase. While the exact wedding date was never confirmed publicly, evidence such as legal hints, social media comments, and subtle language changes sparked rumors that Amy and Brian married privately sometime in late 2024. One of the most noteworthy indicators came from Amy herself. When she shared a photo thanking a fan for purchasing her artwork, she wrote, "Be on the lookout for Amy Lavin Creations. I'm working on a website." The use of the last name Lavin suggested a name change, which is typically associated with marriage. The timing of the suspected wedding aligned with the period following the baby's hospital stay, a time when Amy was reevaluating stability, support systems, and long-term commitments. The hospitalization may have accelerated certain decisions, especially if Amy saw Brian's involvement as dependable during one of the most distressing experiences a parent can face. Despite speculation, neither Amy nor Brian provided public confirmation through statements, photos, or traditional announcements. This absence of confirmation led fans to believe the potential wedding may have been filmed for future episodes or intentionally kept private due to personal reasons or network agreements. With ongoing filming for Season 8 expected, many believe the full details may eventually be revealed on the show rather than online. Throughout this period, Amy's focus remained primarily on her children and their recovery. Her experience with the hospital stay became a defining chapter in her recent life, influencing her behavior, scheduling, and priorities. While the medical details of the baby's condition remained private, the aftermath indicated ongoing appointments, monitoring, and lifestyle adjustments to support long-term health needs. The experience also appears to have reshaped Amy's public identity. Instead of frequent appearances online or public discussions about relationships, makeup, pranks, weight loss, or household updates, Amy shifted toward quieter engagement and selective sharing. Fans continue to watch closely, waiting for additional confirmation regarding her relationship with Brian, the well-being of her children, and future developments on 1,000-pound sisters. As hours passed inside the hospital, Amy tried to stay calm, but her anxiety clawed at her chest. Every beep from a nearby machine, every nurse walking quickly, every whisper she couldn't interpret, everything made her fear the worst. She kept replaying how quickly things had changed. One moment, her baby was laughing at home, holding onto her shirt, making silly faces. The next, he was struggling to breathe, and she was dialing 911 with trembling hands. Brian stood beside her, occasionally rubbing her shoulder in an attempt to ground her. He had always been the calm one between them, someone who could handle chaos without falling apart. But even he couldn't fully hide the worry written across his face. The situation was serious, more serious than either of them expected. When the nurse finally approached, Amy sat forward, clutching her hands together. "He's stable," the nurse explained gently. "But we need to figure out what triggered the breathing problems. Right now, the doctors are running tests." Amy nodded repeatedly, but tears ran down her face anyway. Relief and fear existed together, neither strong enough to replace the other. The nurse smiled softly. "You did the right thing bringing him in quickly." Those words, although simple, lifted a heavy weight from Amy's chest. As a mother, she constantly questioned herself, her choices, her timing, her instincts. Hearing that she did something right meant everything in that moment. While they waited, Amy scrolled through her phone, not because she wanted to, but because she needed a distraction. She saw messages from fans, DMs asking about her wedding, comments wondering whether she had secretly changed her last name. Some were excited. Some were judgmental. Some accused her of moving on too fast from her past marriage. Normally, she would engage. She would reply, post a story, joke about it. But not today. Today wasn't about gossip, rings, rumors, or headlines. Today was about her child. She put the phone down and focused on breathing, one slow inhale, one slow exhale, trying to match the rhythm her therapist once taught her. Brian leaned closer. "You okay?" "No," Amy whispered, voice cracking. "But I'm trying." He nodded, understanding without needing further explanation. Minutes later, the doors opened and a doctor walked toward them. Amy immediately stood up. Her heart pounded so loudly, she felt it in her ears. "We've identified the issue," the doctor said, holding a clipboard. "Your son appears to be experiencing an acute respiratory condition possibly triggered by infection or allergic reaction. We're continuing treatment, and he's responding well." Amy let out a shaking breath, part relief, part exhaustion. She didn't realize how tightly she had been holding herself together until her knees nearly weakened beneath her. "Can we see him?" she asked softly. "Yes," the doctor replied, "but only one at a time right now." Brian placed a hand on her back. "You go first." Amy nodded and followed the doctor down the hallway. With every step, her chest grew lighter and heavier at the same time, relief mixing with fear, hope blending with worry. Entering the room, she saw her baby lying in a small hospital crib, wires attached to his body, oxygen helping him breathe. The image shattered her. She covered her mouth, holding back a sob, but tears still streamed down uncontrollably. She gently touched his tiny hand. His fingers twitched in response, and despite everything, that small movement made her smile. "You're strong," she whispered, "just like Mommy." She talked to him softly, telling him stories about his brother, reminding him of their silly games, promising him toys and snacks and cuddles, anything to bring comfort. Moments later, his eyes slowly opened. Even though he was tired and disoriented, he saw her. And that was enough. Amy broke into an emotional laugh, half laughter, half tears. She kissed the top of his hand and whispered words she meant with her entire soul. "You're gonna be okay." Back in the waiting area, Brian scrolled his phone, not for distraction, but because he had responsibilities now. His relationship with Amy was no longer just affection and excitement. It came with real-life pressure, real-life commitments, and now real-life emergencies. His screen filled with messages, friends asking if everything was okay, his family checking in, producers wanting updates. The show valued drama, emotion, shock factor moments, but he refused to let his personal reality become just another scene. For the first time, the weight of being with someone who lived publicly hit him differently. Loving Amy meant loving not only her, but the spotlight she came with, the fans, the criticism, the speculation, the cameras. And now hospitals. He put his phone away and whispered to himself, "I'm not going anywhere." An hour later, the nurse returned and informed them that Amy's son would need to remain under observation for at least 24 hours. This wasn't just a quick checkup, it was serious, and they needed to monitor his breathing closely. Amy didn't argue. She didn't complain. She simply nodded. Because if staying longer meant her child would be safe, then that's what she would do. As night approached, she sent a message to her family group chat. "At hospital. Baby's okay for now. We'll update later." Tammy was the first to respond. "Stay strong. Love y'all." Then another message. "Let me know if you need anything." Those words surprised Amy, not because Tammy didn't care, but because their relationship was complicated. Strong, but layered. Supportive, but sometimes distant. However, in moments like this, family wasn't optional. It was essential. Amy closed her eyes, exhaling slowly as she held onto her son's tiny hand. Tomorrow would bring more tests, more answers, and maybe even more questions. But today her baby was alive. And that was enough. The night inside the hospital felt endless. Hospitals had a way of bending time, making minutes feel like hours and hours feel like days. The dim hallway lights cast long shadows, and the muffled footsteps of nurses created a rhythm that almost felt like background noise in a movie. But for Amy, there was no film, no script, just reality, raw and unfiltered. She sat beside the small hospital crib where her son slept. His breathing was steadier now, supported by machines and medication. Every rise and fall of his chest became the only thing she cared about. She couldn't bring herself to sleep. Every time her eyes closed, fear rushed in like a tidal wave. Her mind wouldn't stop replaying the moment everything went wrong. Her baby's labored breathing, the panic, the ambulance, the helplessness of a mother watching something happen she couldn't fix. She rubbed her face with both hands and whispered to herself, "I just want you safe. I just want you healthy." It didn't matter what people online said about her, whether they judged her parenting, her appearance, her relationships, or her choices. None of it mattered compared to this moment. All she wanted was to take her baby home. A nurse quietly entered the room to check vitals. "Any changes?" Amy asked softly. "His oxygen levels have improved," the nurse replied with a reassuring smile. "He's responding well to treatment. We just need to monitor him through the night." Amy nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. "Is there anything I should be worried about?" she asked, bracing herself. The nurse paused, thinking carefully before responding. "Right now, he's stable. That's a good sign. But respiratory issues in babies can be unpredictable. You did everything right by bringing him in early." Those words repeated in her head like a mantra. You did everything right. For a moment, her shoulders finally relaxed. In the hallway, Brian paced back and forth. He didn't want to overwhelm Amy by hovering, but he also couldn't sit still. His mind was spinning, not from fear alone, but from the realization of how quickly life can change. One day, you're posting photos, planning weddings, laughing. The next, you're praying in a hospital waiting room. At one point, he stopped pacing and stared out the window into the dark parking lot. The streetlights reflected off scattered puddles from earlier rain, creating a quiet, almost still scene. He took a deep breath and whispered, "I'm in this. I'm staying." He wasn't just saying it, he was deciding it. Loving someone meant being there for the calm and the chaos, the highs and the terrifying lows. In that moment, he knew Amy wasn't just someone he loved, she was someone he would protect. By early morning, exhaustion finally caught up to Amy. Her body felt heavy, her eyes burned, and her mind fogged. A nurse noticed her nodding off and gently placed a blanket over her shoulders. "You need rest," the nurse said softly. "He's safe. We're here." Amy didn't argue. She leaned her head against the chair and slowly drifted into a light sleep, never fully relaxed, but enough to keep her functioning. While she slept, her son rested peacefully. His breathing grew steadier, his body less tense. The machines remained connected, but their beeps became less alarming and more like steady reassurance. Hours later, Amy woke up to the sound of a soft coo. Her eyes snapped open. Her baby was awake, really awake, not groggy, not gasping, not struggling. His eyes were open, looking around the room with curious confusion. Amy immediately leaned forward, brushing her fingers across his forehead. "There you are," she whispered with relief, so intense it made her voice tremble. "Mama's here." Her baby blinked, then squeezed her finger. That small gesture, simple, innocent, was enough to break her. Tears fell again, but these weren't the same tears of fear. These were tears of gratitude. Hours later, a doctor entered with a clipboard and a calmer tone than before. "We've reviewed all tests," he said. "It appears the respiratory issue was caused by a combination of infection and inflammation. Medication is working, and he's improving well." Amy exhaled slowly. "So, he's going to be okay?" she asked, barely daring to believe it. "Yes," the doctor confirmed with a nod. "He'll need monitoring at home and a follow-up appointment, but he's doing great." Amy covered her mouth as relief washed over her. She turned and looked at Brian, who gave her a small nod. Quiet but proud. "He's strong," Brian said softly. Amy smiled weakly, just like his daddy. It was the first time she said it without hesitation. Later, when the nurse helped disconnect some of the equipment and prepare discharge paperwork, Amy finally allowed herself to breathe freely. As she packed the diaper bag and gathered belongings, her phone buzzed again, messages pouring in from fans, family, and media pages speculating on her disappearance from social media. For a moment, she considered posting a photo, a statement, a reassurance. But then she locked her phone. Not everything needed to be shared. Not everything needed an audience. Some moments belonged only to her. She picked up her son, holding him close, inhaling the familiar scent of baby lotion and soft blankets. "You scared me," she whispered into his hair. "But you're okay. That's all that matters." Brian placed his hand on her back, steady and warm. "Ready to go home?" he asked. Amy nodded. "Yeah," she breathed. "Let's go home." The crisis was not something she expected, and it was not something she ever wanted to repeat. But it reminded her of something she had forgotten while navigating fame and relationships. Motherhood wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up through fear, through exhaustion, through everything. And she had shown up. Now, she walked out of the hospital not just as Amy Slatten, the reality star, the newlywed, the headline name, but as Amy, a fighter, a mother, a woman determined to protect her children no matter what. Leaving the hospital felt surreal. The automatic door slid open, and the cool outside air brushed against Amy's face, almost shocking compared to the warm, sterile environment inside. The sunlight felt brighter than usual, as if the world didn't know that the last 24 hours had been some of the hardest of her life. She held her baby close, extra careful with every step. Brian carried the diaper bag, paperwork, and the car seat, trying his best to handle everything so Amy could focus on their son. As they walked toward the car, Amy kept glancing down, checking every few seconds to make sure her baby was breathing normally. Even though the doctors assured her he was okay, her instincts refused to relax. Once they reached the car, Brian carefully buckled the baby in. Amy double-checked every strap, then checked again, her anxiety still lingering. Only when she was absolutely certain did she finally climb into the passenger seat. Before starting the car, Brian paused and looked at her. "You did good," he said quietly. Amy stared out the window, trying to process the words. "Feels like I barely held it together," she murmured. "Yeah," Brian replied with a soft laugh. "But you held it together. That's what matters." Amy finally met his gaze and offered a small smile, weak but real. The drive home was quiet, not tense, just thoughtful. The kind of silence where emotions are still settling and reality is being stitched back together. Every now and then, Amy would turn her head to check on her son, watching his chest gently rise and fall with steady breaths. When they pulled into the driveway, Amy felt a strange mix of relief and vulnerability. Home was supposed to be safe, predictable, but after what happened, she realized how fragile safety really was. Life could shift in an instant. She carried her baby inside and placed him gently in his playpen. The familiar surroundings felt comforting: scattered toys, baby blankets, and tiny socks that never stayed paired. Home wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. The moment she sat down, exhaustion hit her like a wave. Her body sank into the couch, and she let out a long breath, one she'd been holding without realizing. Brian sat beside her. "You want to talk about it?" he asked. Amy shook her head. "Not yet," she whispered. "I just need a minute to feel normal again." Brian nodded and didn't press further. Sometimes silence was better than words. Later that afternoon, Amy finally picked up her phone. Notifications flooded in: missed calls, texts, fan messages, tabloid alerts. Social media was buzzing with theories about her sudden disappearance. Some comments were concerned: "Hope you're okay," sending love and prayers. Some were intrusive: "Did the baby get hurt? Where's Brian? Why aren't you posting?" And some were cruel: "She's probably exaggerating again." Drama for attention. Amy stared at the screen, feeling anger and sadness mix inside her. People forgot she was human. A mother. Someone who loved her children more than anything. She slowly typed a response. Not long, not dramatic, just honest. "My son was hospitalized. He's okay now. I needed to focus on him. Thank you to everyone who cared." She hovered her thumb above the post button. Then she deleted it. She didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not now, not for this, not ever. Instead, she sent a private message to her closest family members, Tammy, Chris, Amanda. He's home. He's okay. We're resting. Within seconds, Tammy replied. Good. Love y'all. A minute later, another message. I'm coming over tomorrow to help. Amy blinked, surprised. Tammy wasn't the type to offer help easily, not because she didn't care, but because historically she struggled to express support in ways people understood. But ever since her own health journey, something in her had shifted. She understood fear differently now. She understood life differently now. Amy typed back, "Thank you." That evening, the house was calm. The baby slept peacefully, the oxygen monitor gently clipped to his blanket just in case. Amy sat beside him, gently stroking his hair while Brian prepared dinner. The air smelled like pasta and garlic toast, a simple meal, but exactly what Amy needed. Comfort food. When Brian placed a plate beside her, Amy wasn't sure she had the energy to eat. But the moment she took a bite, she realized how hungry she truly was. Stress had replaced her appetite the night before, but now her body reminded her that she needed strength too. You okay? Brian asked again, not because he needed reassurance, but because he cared. Amy nodded slowly. I will be, she replied. Brian exhaled with relief. You scared me, he admitted quietly. Amy looked at him, surprised. I scared myself, she whispered. They shared a brief, emotional silence, not heavy, but meaningful. Then Brian said something she didn't expect. I'm proud of you. Amy's eyes filled with tears, not the panicked kind, but the soft kind that come when someone finally feels seen. No one's ever said that to me during the hard part, she said quietly. Brian took her hand. Maybe that's because no one was paying attention before, he replied. But I am. That night, Amy didn't sleep much. But for the first time since the hospital, her fear wasn't overwhelming. She kept watch, checking breathing, adjusting blankets, whispering quiet reassurances. Motherhood wasn't about feeling fearless. It was about acting anyway. It was about staying when it was hard, loving through uncertainty, holding on to hope even when everything felt fragile. As she watched her son rest peacefully, she realized something powerful. She wasn't the same person she had been before the ambulance call. She was stronger, more protective, more certain of her priorities. The world could judge her. People could gossip. Rumors could spread. None of it mattered. Her children were her heart, her purpose, her home, and she would protect them no matter what. The next morning, Amy woke to the soft hum of the baby monitor. Light streamed through the curtains, casting a golden glow across the nursery. The house was quiet, save for the occasional rustle of a blanket or the faint sigh of her son. She rose carefully, mindful not to wake him, and tiptoed to the kitchen. Brian was already there, sipping coffee, his eyes heavy but alert. He looked up as she entered. Morning, he said softly. Morning, Amy replied, her voice husky from lack of sleep. Brian gestured to the coffee pot. You need this more than me. Amy accepted the mug, the warmth seeping into her hands and calming some of the tension that had settled overnight. She took a slow sip, letting the quiet morning soothe her frayed nerves. For the first time, she allowed herself to think about what had happened the day before. The hospital, the fear, the waiting, the uncertainty. Each memory still carried a sharp edge, but it was starting to dull, replaced with gratitude that her child was safe. Brian leaned against the counter, watching her with a quiet intensity. You were incredible yesterday, he said. I don't know how you did it, staying calm, staying focused, but you did. Amy shook her head, feeling both proud and overwhelmed. I wasn't calm. I was terrified. I just had to be there for him. That's what makes you amazing, Brian replied, his voice low and steady. For a long moment, they just stood there, two people connected by shared fear and relief. The air between them was filled with an unspoken understanding of vulnerability, love, and the weight of responsibility. Later that day, Tammy arrived as promised, carrying a large tote filled with groceries, baby supplies, and a few home-cooked meals. She didn't speak much, but her presence alone was comforting. Amy greeted her with a weary smile. "Thanks for coming." Tammy shrugged. "I'm here. That's what matters." Together, they unpacked supplies and organized the house. Tammy handled laundry and baby clothes, while Amy focused on feeding and soothing her son. It was a simple routine, but the normalcy of it was healing. Brian occasionally chimed in, helping where he could, making sure everyone had what they needed. The three adults worked quietly, understanding that actions spoke louder than words in moments like these. That evening, Amy finally had a chance to sit alone with her thoughts. She sat in the nursery, watching her son sleep, and reflected on the whirlwind of events. Her mind wandered to the hospital, to the doctors, to the moments when fear had nearly consumed her. She thought about the lessons she had learned. Life was unpredictable. Fear was inevitable. But love was constant. No matter what the world threw at her, she knew she could face it. Because she had faced the unimaginable already and had come through with strength she hadn't realized she possessed. She whispered softly, almost as if talking to herself, "We're okay. We're safe. We're home." Her baby stirred slightly, then settled again, and Amy felt a wave of peace wash over her. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, releasing some of the tension she had carried like armor. As night fell, the house quieted once more. Brian sat beside her, his hand resting gently on hers. "You did good today," he said. Amy smiled faintly, leaning into his shoulder. "We did good," she corrected. "All of us." The baby slept between them, small and peaceful, unaware of the storm he had weathered. Amy realized that moments like these, quiet, ordinary, filled with love, were more precious than any public appearance, any social media post, or any spotlight on their lives. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the comfort of her family envelop her. Tomorrow might bring new challenges, but for now, they were safe. And that was enough. In that moment, Amy understood something essential. The world could judge, gossip, or doubt her, but nothing could ever diminish the bond she had with her children and the family she had chosen to surround herself with. That bond was her fortress, her anchor, her source of true strength. And as she sat there, holding her son and feeling the steady pulse of life around her, Amy finally allowed herself to hope, for healing, for peace, and for the days ahead to be brighter than the darkest night she had endured. The next morning, Amy woke to the soft, insistent cooing of her son. His tiny fingers reached out, brushing against her face, as if demanding attention. Sleep had been scarce, but this small, tender moment made it all worthwhile. Brian was already up, pacing the kitchen with a notebook in hand. He was jotting down reminders, appointments, and tasks for the week, anything to keep their fragile peace intact. He glanced up as Amy entered, offering a tired but genuine smile. "Morning," he said. Amy returned the smile, though it barely touched the exhaustion in her eyes. "Morning. Did you sleep at all?" Brian shook his head. "Not much. But that's okay. We've got a lot to handle today." Amy nodded, knowing he was right. The hospital visits, follow-up appointments, and pediatric checkups would continue for some time. Each one reminded her how quickly life could change and how precious every moment truly was. By mid-morning, they were out the door, the baby safely secured in his car seat. Tammy had insisted on driving, refusing to let Amy or Brian navigate the morning traffic while drained and anxious. The ride to the pediatrician's office was quiet, punctuated only by the baby's soft gurgles and the occasional coo from Amy. At the clinic, the pediatrician greeted them warmly. "Good to see you all again. How has he been since discharge?" Amy took a deep breath. "He's been great. Still a little fussy, but he's feeding well and sleeping better each night." The doctor smiled. "That's exactly what we like to hear. Let's do a quick checkup to make sure everything is progressing as it should." The examination was thorough, but routine. Amy held her son close, stroking his tiny hands as the doctor checked vitals, reflexes, and growth metrics. Brian stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back. Tammy hovered nearby, ready to step in if needed. When the doctor finally spoke, relief washed over Amy like a tidal wave. He's doing wonderfully. All of his vitals are normal, and he's progressing exactly as expected. You've done an incredible job caring for him. Amy felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Brian squeezed her hand gently. See? I told you we could get through this. Tammy nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. You two are doing amazing. Just remember to breathe and take it one day at a time. Back at home, the atmosphere was calmer, more controlled. Amy focused on establishing routines, feeding schedules, nap times, and quiet play sessions. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced her confidence. She documented milestones, snapping a few photos to capture the fleeting moments of early childhood. Brian began researching local support groups for new parents, determined to provide resources and guidance in case challenges arose. Tammy helped with chores, meal prep, and emotional support, bridging the gap between recovery and normalcy. In the evenings, after the baby had finally fallen asleep, Amy found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. She thought about the hospital nights, the moments of terror, and the overwhelming sense of helplessness that had threatened to consume her. Yet, despite it all, they had survived. Not just survived, they had thrived, strengthened by the love that bound them together. Amy began to share glimpses of their life online again, carefully balancing transparency with privacy. She posted photos of milestone moments, such as the first smile, the first time the baby rolled over, and the quiet moments of reading bedtime stories. Each post was met with supportive comments and encouragement, a reminder that the online world could still offer positivity if curated wisely. Brian occasionally shared updates as well, emphasizing the importance of family, resilience, and hope. Their joint presence created a sense of solidarity and inspiration for followers navigating their own parenting journeys. Through it all, Amy realized that this chapter of her life, though challenging, was shaping her into a more patient, compassionate, and resilient mother. Every sleepless night, every tear shed, and every small victory contributed to a larger picture of strength and love. As days turned into weeks, the family settled into a rhythm. The fear and panic that had initially defined their days slowly gave way to gratitude and quiet joy. Amy spent mornings with the baby, Brian handled logistics and appointments, and Tammy provided constant support. Evenings were for reflection and connection. They shared stories, planned future outings, and quietly celebrated small wins. Each day was a testament to perseverance, proof that even the darkest moments could be followed by light. Amy often held her son close during these moments, feeling his steady heartbeat against her chest. She whispered promises into his tiny ears, promises of safety, love, and protection. Promises she would never break. And with each passing day, Amy felt the weight of the past lifting, replaced by hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief that together, they could face anything. The early mornings had become routine, though never easy. The baby's cries often pierced the quiet hours, pulling Amy and Brian from sleep before the sun had fully risen. Yet, there was a rhythm to it now, a predictability that made the chaos manageable. One particular morning, Amy noticed something unusual. Her son seemed more lethargic than usual, his skin slightly pale, and his tiny hands cold to the touch. A knot formed in her stomach. She immediately called Brian over, her voice tinged with worry. Brian, I don't like this. He doesn't feel right, Amy said, her hands trembling slightly as she held the baby. Brian's eyes darkened with concern. Let's not panic. We'll call the doctor and see what they say. They quickly contacted the pediatrician, who advised them to bring the baby in immediately for observation. The drive to the clinic was tense, every red light and honking horn magnified in Amy's anxious mind. Brian kept a steady hand on her shoulder, whispering words of reassurance. Upon arrival, the medical team quickly assessed the baby. Amy clutched his tiny frame as nurses swarmed around them, checking vitals, drawing blood, and performing tests. The waiting room felt like an eternity. Tammy paced back and forth, her face tight with worry. Finally, the doctor returned. He's showing mild dehydration and a slight infection. Nothing severe, but we need to monitor him in the hospital for the next 24 to 48 hours. Amy felt a wave of fear and guilt wash over her. Oh no, how did this happen? I thought I was being careful. Brian held her close. It's not your fault. Babies get sick sometimes. What matters is we're here now, and we'll make sure he's okay. The hospital stay was a roller coaster of emotions. Amy spent long hours by her son's side, gently rocking him, whispering comfort, and trying to soothe his discomfort. Brian coordinated with the nurses, monitored charts, and ensured every instruction was followed precisely. Tammy, refusing to leave, brought meals, blankets, and small comforts to make the stay less stressful. At night, Amy sat by the crib, watching her son sleep under the soft glow of a bedside lamp. Every shallow breath, every tiny movement was a reminder of how fragile life could be. She thought back to previous scares, realizing how resilient her family had become through these trials. Even with the fear, there were moments of levity. The baby's faint smiles, the tiny giggles that escaped when Brian made funny faces, and Tammy's playful teasing reminded them that joy could exist even in the midst of worry. The medical team was thorough, checking vitals every few hours, adjusting fluids, and monitoring for any signs of complications. Amy and Brian learned to read every subtle signal, when the baby was uncomfortable, when he needed feeding, when sleep eluded him. The experience forged a deep bond between them, strengthened by sleepless nights and shared anxiety. By the second day, there were signs of improvement. The baby's color returned, energy levels increased, and feeding patterns normalized. Amy allowed herself a cautious optimism, though she knew full recovery would take careful attention at home. Before discharge, the doctor sat down with Amy and Brian. He's responding very well to treatment. At home, continue to monitor hydration, feeding, and sleep closely. Follow up in a few days to ensure he maintains this progress. Amy felt a weight lift from her shoulders, relief mingled with exhaustion. Thank you so much, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Brian held her hand tightly. We did it. He's going to be okay. Tammy hugged them both, her eyes glistening. See? I told you we could handle this. One step at a time. Back home, the family returned to their routines, now with an added layer of vigilance. Amy meticulously tracked feeding times, sleep, and diaper changes. Brian coordinated schedules, ensuring she had support and time to rest. Tammy remained a constant presence, providing both practical help and emotional reassurance. Amy began to reflect on the experience, recognizing how it had changed her perspective on parenthood. Fear and uncertainty were constant companions, but so were love, resilience, and the capacity to endure. She realized that moments of crisis often revealed the deepest strengths in people. Late at night, after the baby had finally drifted into a peaceful sleep, Amy sat in the nursery, holding him close. She whispered promises of protection, love, and guidance, vows forged through fear, hope, and unwavering devotion. In these quiet moments, she understood that parenthood was not about perfection but about presence. It was about showing up, caring deeply, and weathering every storm together. And she knew, deep in her heart, that their little family had the strength to face whatever came next. The days following the hospital stay were marked by a cautious return to normalcy. Amy and Brian carefully followed the doctor's instructions, ensuring that every feeding, nap, and checkup was meticulously logged. Each smile from their baby felt like a small victory, a sign that the worst was behind them, but the anxiety lingered, a shadow that refused to fully lift. Tammy, ever vigilant, stayed nearby, helping with household chores, preparing meals, and watching the baby so Amy and Brian could steal moments of rest. Even small tasks became a team effort, every diaper change, every bottle, every lullaby shared among them. Despite the stress, There were glimpses of joy that reminded Amy why she had worked so hard to reach this point in her life. Her sons, Gage and Glenn, were excited to have their new sibling home. They crowded around the crib, asking endless questions about the baby, eager to touch him gently and make him feel loved. Their curiosity and affection brought smiles to Amy's tired face, offering a reprieve from the lingering fear. Brian found himself quietly amazed at Amy's resilience. Her calm determination, her willingness to endure sleepless nights and constant worry, and her unwavering love for her children became the anchor of their household. He often caught himself staring at her, admiration and gratitude etched into his expression. One evening, after the baby had been fed and settled for the night, Amy sat in the nursery, reflecting on the past few days. She traced her fingers along the tiny hands that had been so fragile just days earlier. "I can't believe how fast it all happened," she whispered to Brian, who sat nearby, gently rubbing her back. Brian nodded. "It's been scary, but we made it through. And we're stronger because of it. Look at him, he's thriving." Amy smiled, but a flicker of worry lingered. She knew that parenthood was a constant balance of joy and fear. Each milestone came with its own set of challenges, and each moment of peace was a brief reprieve from the unknown. As they watched their baby sleep, a sense of unity settled over them. Their family had faced a crisis and emerged intact, their bonds deepened by the shared experience. Amy felt a profound sense of gratitude for her partner, for her supportive sister, and for the resilience that had carried them through. The next day brought the first post-hospital checkup. Amy and Brian nervously loaded the car with diaper bags, bottles, and medical records, each item a symbol of their meticulous care. Tammy joined them, insisting on accompanying them to offer support and moral encouragement. At the pediatrician's office, the baby's vitals were checked once again. The doctor smiled, visibly pleased with the progress. "He's doing very well," the doctor said. "Keep up the current routine and continue monitoring hydration and feeding. You're doing an excellent job." Amy felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Relief and pride mingled in a bittersweet swirl. "Thank you. Really, thank you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Brian squeezed her hand. "We did this together. Every step of the way." Tammy leaned over, hugging both of them. "See? I knew he'd pull through. You've been amazing." Returning home, Amy felt a renewed sense of purpose. She set up a detailed schedule for feedings and naps, incorporating moments for self-care, family interaction, and work. She even began planning small creative projects, such as artwork inspired by her experiences, to keep her mind engaged during the long hours at home. Each night, as the household settled and the baby drifted off to sleep, Amy would journal her thoughts, chronicling the challenges, triumphs, and lessons learned. She wanted to remember every detail, the fears, the victories, the quiet moments of connection. These reflections became a source of strength, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, love and perseverance could guide them through. Amy's journey through the hospital scare and its aftermath became a turning point. It was a reminder of the fragility of life, the depth of parental love, and the resilience required to navigate the uncertainties of raising a child. Every sleepless night, every anxious heartbeat, and every tear shed was a testament to her commitment to her family. Through it all, Amy realized that the experience had brought them closer, not just as parents, but as partners and as a family unit. Brian's unwavering support, Tammy's steadfast presence, and the baby's growing strength all intertwined to form a foundation of trust, love, and resilience. As she looked around the nursery, watching the baby breathe peacefully, Amy felt a quiet certainty. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they had the strength to face them together. The hospital scare was not the end, but the beginning of a deeper understanding of family, commitment, and the unyielding power of love. In the days that followed, Amy and Brian settled into a delicate rhythm, balancing the care of their newborn with the needs of Gage and Glenn. Every morning began early, often before sunrise, with gentle whispers of "wake up" and the shuffle of feet across the floor. Brian would prepare breakfast while Amy fed the baby, and together they would guide the older boys through their morning routines. The hospital experience had left its mark on Amy. She noticed every tiny change in her baby's behavior. The way he stirred slightly during a nap, the subtle shift in skin tone after a feeding, the quickening of his pulse during a diaper change. At times, her anxiety resurfaced, but she learned to temper it with measured observation and a growing trust in her instincts. Tammy remained a constant presence, her protective nature heightened after the hospital scare. She often stayed late into the evening, ensuring that the household ran smoothly. Her influence was subtle but essential. She reminded Amy to rest, encouraged Brian to take breaks, and even found creative ways to entertain the older boys so that Amy could focus on the baby. One afternoon, Amy noticed a slight change in the baby's feeding pattern. A pause here, a frown there, small signals that would have been easily overlooked before the hospital incident now demanded her attention. She calmly documented each observation, ready to contact the pediatrician if necessary. Brian watched her with quiet admiration. "You're incredible," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You've become an expert in what most people wouldn't even notice." Amy managed a tired smile. I don't want to take any chances. I've seen how quickly things can turn." Brian nodded, understanding the depth of her fear. "And that's exactly why we're ready for anything." Despite the anxiety, moments of lightness crept into their days. Laughter returned to the household, often sparked by the antics of Gage and Glenn. They delighted in telling their baby brother stories, showing him toys, and even attempting silly songs that had the entire room echoing with laughter. Amy found herself laughing along, the sound genuine and healing. The baby, sensing the energy in the room, often responded with small coos and tentative smiles. Those moments were precious, reinforcing the fragile beauty of everyday life after a crisis. Amy took mental snapshots of these experiences, storing them like treasures to revisit in quieter moments. Evenings were a blend of exhaustion and contentment. After the older boys were in bed, Amy and Brian would settle with the baby between them, reflecting on the day and planning for the next. They discussed milestones, shared worries, and occasionally indulged in dreams of the future. One night, Amy whispered, "I never thought I'd feel this kind of fear and love at the same time." Brian held her hand, a gentle pressure of reassurance. "It's the most human thing we'll ever feel, and we're stronger because of it." Amy also began to notice the subtle ways the hospital experience had changed her perspective on life. She became more attuned to the fragility of health, more patient with the small setbacks of parenting, and more appreciative of the simple joys: a quiet smile, a soft coo, a fleeting moment of peace. She shared some of these reflections with fans on social media, carefully balancing transparency with privacy. Her posts resonated with parents everywhere, stories of fear, resilience, and love that felt universal. Comments poured in, expressing support, understanding, and empathy. Many shared their own experiences, creating a network of encouragement that reminded Amy she was not alone. Despite the growing routine, Amy remained vigilant. Any irregular breathing, fussiness, or minor symptoms sparked immediate attention. The scare had taught her that early intervention was crucial and that parental intuition could never be underestimated. Brian mirrored her dedication, often staying awake through the night, checking the baby's temperature and documenting every feed. The bond between them deepened, built not just on love, but on shared responsibility, sacrifice, and the shared understanding that family came first. The first month home was a mixture of triumphs and trials. The baby gained weight steadily, feeding improved, and sleep patterns slowly stabilized. Amy, Brian, and Tammy celebrated each small victory, knowing how far they had come since the hospital. Amy reflected often on the experience, aware that the crisis had fundamentally reshaped her understanding of motherhood. She felt a renewed commitment to protecting her family, embracing each challenge with patience, strength, and unwavering love. Through the sleepless nights, emotional highs, and quiet triumphs, one truth became clear: the bond of family had been fortified in ways nothing else could replicate. The hospital scare was not just a test of endurance, It was a lesson in resilience, an affirmation of love, and a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty, hope could prevail. Amy looked around the nursery one night, taking in the soft glow of the lamp, the gentle rise and fall of her baby's chest, and the quiet presence of Brian by her side. A sense of calm washed over her, tempered by gratitude and strengthened by the trials they had endured together. She knew challenges would continue to come, but she also knew they could face them. Together, as a family, they had learned the true meaning of perseverance, love, and unwavering devotion. As the days turned into weeks, Amy noticed a subtle shift in her own confidence as a mother. The hospital scare, once a source of constant anxiety, had evolved into a framework for understanding her instincts and responses. She approached each day with careful observation, balancing caution with the desire to nurture and enjoy the fleeting moments of infancy. Brian remained a steady anchor in the storm of sleepless nights and overwhelming responsibility. He developed his own routines, memorizing the baby's feeding schedule, learning the subtle cues of hunger or discomfort, and quickly becoming adept at soothing and comforting when cries filled the house. Their partnership deepened, forged in the crucible of necessity and shared devotion. Tammy continued to play a pivotal role, bridging the gap between worry and reassurance. Her presence in the home offered both practical support and emotional grounding. When Amy began to second-guess a decision, Tammy's voice provided calm, measured guidance. "You're doing everything right," she often reminded. "Trust yourself. The baby trusts you." Amy also began to notice the small milestones, first smiles, tiny hand grasps, subtle coups, that once might have been overlooked but now felt monumental. She recorded them meticulously, capturing photographs and videos not just for memory, but as a tangible reminder of growth and resilience. Each achievement, no matter how minor, was a victory over fear. Despite the improvements, occasional setbacks reminded Amy and Brian of the fragility of newborn life. A late-night cough or a restless sleep would reignite worry, sending them into careful observation and documentation. Yet they had learned not to succumb to panic. Calls to the pediatrician became measured, informed by their growing knowledge and trust in professional guidance. Friends and extended family reached out, offering support and encouragement. Messages of concern were met with gratitude, but Amy and Brian realized that their journey, while shared in part, remained uniquely theirs. The hospital experience had carved a private space of resilience and vigilance, a bond between them that could not be replicated. Amy found herself reflecting on the broader impact of the hospital scare. She recognized how easily life could shift in an instant, how priorities could be realigned with a single event. The experience sharpened her focus on what truly mattered: the health, safety, and happiness of her children, and the relationships that sustained them. Brian often echoed these sentiments. "Everything else can wait," he would say. "Our family is all that matters." One particularly challenging night, when the baby refused to sleep despite every effort, Amy felt the familiar surge of anxiety. Yet, she remembered the lessons learned from their hospital ordeal: patience, observation, and presence. She held the baby close, softly humming a tune while Brian gently rocked them in rhythm. Hours passed in quiet persistence, but eventually, relief came in the form of a peaceful, deep sleep. The triumph was quiet but profound, a reminder that endurance, love, and vigilance often went hand in hand. Amy also became more proactive about preventive care, scheduling checkups and vaccinations with meticulous attention to detail. Every doctor's appointment became an opportunity not only for medical oversight but for reassurance and learning. The experience strengthened her relationship with healthcare providers, allowing her to communicate concerns effectively and confidently. At the same time, social media became a conduit for connection and reflection. Amy shared moments of vulnerability and triumph, resonating with followers who had faced similar fears. Her transparency fostered a community of empathy, understanding, and shared experience, reminding her that while the journey was intensely personal, it was not solitary. The older boys, Gage and Glenn, also adapted to the new rhythm of the household. They learned the importance of gentle care, helping in small ways with feeding, toys, and attention. Amy and Brian encouraged their involvement, balancing independence with guidance, teaching empathy and responsibility alongside everyday life lessons. Family outings were initially cautious, limited to short walks and familiar spaces. But gradually, confidence returned. Amy watched the boys interact, noting how the family dynamic had strengthened through adversity. Laughter became more frequent, smiles more abundant, and a sense of normalcy began to emerge, albeit tempered by the memories of the hospital scare. Even as life gradually normalized, Amy remained vigilant. She knew that parenting would always carry uncertainties, but the hospital incident had equipped her with tools for resilience, careful observation, immediate action when necessary, and above all, trust in herself. Brian often expressed admiration for her growth. "You're incredible," he would say. "You've transformed fear into strength. You've turned an ordeal into wisdom." Amy smiled quietly, aware that while challenges were inevitable, her family had emerged stronger, more cohesive, and more appreciative of the fragile beauty of life. The hospital scare had left its mark, but it had also illuminated the depth of her love, the resilience of her spirit, and the enduring strength of family bonds. Life continued, a balance of care, laughter, and quiet reflection. Amy held her baby in the soft glow of the nursery lamp one evening, feeling the gentle rhythm of his breathing against her chest. She reflected on the journey from fear to hope, from crisis to triumph, and knew that the experience had changed her in ways both visible and invisible. Every challenge, every sleepless night, every whispered reassurance had contributed to a profound understanding that love, vigilance, and dedication could transform even the most terrifying moments into stories of resilience and strength. The hospital scare had been a turning point, a chapter of fear and uncertainty, but ultimately, it became a testament to the power of perseverance, the depth of parental love, and the unbreakable bonds of family.